Her wrists burned under the cold bite of the chains, each link clinking like a mocking whisper as they paraded her through the base. The crowd's jeers stung worse than the metal, their words slicing through the air. Traitor, fraud, weak. But when a four-star general stepped forward, his voice steady and his gaze unyielding, the chaos froze, and the truth began to unravel in a way no one expected. The sun hung low over the dusty training grounds of Camp Valor, a sprawling military base nestled in the heart of a desert so vast it felt like the edge of the world. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kane stood at the center of a makeshift stage, her hands bound behind her, the chains glinting under the harsh afternoon light. Her dark hair, usually pulled into a tight bun, had come loose, strands clinging to her sweat-streaked face. She was a Navy SEAL, one of the first women to earn the Trident and the best sniper the program had seen in decades. Her kill count in covert ops was whispered about in reverent tones by those who knew her record. 47 confirmed, each one a surgical strike that saved lives. But now, she was here, shackled like a criminal, her uniform stripped of its insignia, her name dragged through the mud. The crowd around her, soldiers, officers, even a few reporters invited for the spectacle, hurled accusations like stones. She cheated her way through training, one voice shouted. She's a liability. Another sneered. Sarah's jaw tightened, but her eyes stayed locked on the horizon, refusing to meet their gazes. She'd faced worse than their words. Enemy fire, sandstorms, nights without sleep in hostile territory. But this betrayal cut deeper than any bullet. It started 3 months ago, when a classified mission in the mountains of Nuristan went sideways. Sarah's team, a tight-knit unit of 6 SEALs, was tasked with eliminating a high-value target, a warlord named Khalid Reza, whose network was funneling weapons to insurgents. The intel was solid, the plan meticulous. Sarah, perched on a ridge a kilometer out, would take the shot while her team infiltrated the compound. She'd done it 100 times, her scope steady, her breath a metronome. The bullet flew true. Reza fell, and the team moved in to secure the site. But then, chaos. An ambush. IEDs tore through the night, and 2 of her teammates, Brooks and Martinez, didn't make it out. The official report pinned the failure on Sarah, claiming her shot was premature, that she'd exposed the team's position. It was a lie, and she knew it. She'd followed protocol to the letter, her shot timed to the second. But someone, somewhere high up, needed a scapegoat, and Sarah, the only woman in the unit, was an easy target. The whispers started immediately. Her training records were scrutinized, her every move questioned. Anonymous leaks to the press painted her as reckless, unqualified, a diversity hire who'd slipped through the cracks. The Navy launched an investigation, but it felt more like a witch hunt. Her teammates, the ones who'd survived, were pressured to corroborate the official story. Only one, a quiet Texan named Lieutenant Jake Harrow, refused to bend. He'd seen her in action, knew her shot was clean, but his voice was drowned out by the machine. By the time they dragged Sarah to this public tribunal, the narrative was set. She was a failure, a disgrace to the SEALs. The chains weren't just for show, they were a message. Women don't belong here. Sarah stood taller, even as the weight of the shackles pulled at her shoulders. She'd trained her mind to block out pain, to focus on the mission, but this wasn't a mission. This was a betrayal by the institution she'd given everything to. She'd grown up in a small Ohio town, the daughter of a single mom who worked double shifts at a diner. Sarah had learned early that nothing came easy, not the grades that got her into Annapolis, not the grueling SEAL training where she'd outlasted men twice her size, not the nights spent staring down a scope, knowing one wrong move could cost lives. She'd earned her place, bled for it, and now they were tearing it away. The crowd's jeers grew louder, but she refused to flinch. She'd faced death too many times to be rattled by their noise. Then, a ripple moved through the crowd. Heads turned, voices hushed. A black SUV rolled to a stop at the edge of the stage, its tires crunching on the gravel. The door opened, and out stepped General Richard Caldwell, a four-star legend whose name carried weight in every corner of the Pentagon. His uniform was crisp, his silver hair catching the sunlight, but it was his eyes, sharp, unyielding, that silenced the crowd. Caldwell was a ghost in the military world, a man who moved mountains from the shadows. He'd overseen operations that never made the news, missions where Sarah's bullets had been the difference between victory and catastrophe. He wasn't supposed to be here. The tribunal was a formality, a public shaming orchestrated by a cabal of officers who'd never liked Sarah's rise. But Caldwell's presence changed everything. He climbed the stage with deliberate steps, each one echoing like a gavel. The officer presiding over the tribunal, a smug colonel named Hargrove, faltered. Mid-sentence, "General Caldwell, sir, this is enough." Caldwell cut him off, his voice low but carrying the weight of a man who'd seen wars won and lost. He turned to the crowd, his gaze sweeping over them like a searchlight. "You've all been fed a story," he said. "A story about a woman who didn't belong, who failed her team, who betrayed her country. It's a lie." The word hung in the air, heavy and final. Sarah's breath caught, but she kept her eyes forward, afraid to hope. Caldwell turned to her, and for the first time, she saw something in his expression, not pity, but respect. "Lieutenant Commander Kane," he said, loud enough for the microphones to catch, "has saved more lives than any of you will ever know. And I'm here to set the record straight." What followed was a reckoning. Caldwell didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. He laid out the truth with surgical precision. The mission in Nuristan had been compromised, not by Sarah, but by a leak in the chain of command. Intelligence had been sold to Reyes's network, and the ambush was planned to cover it up. Sarah's shot was the only thing that kept the entire team from being wiped out. Caldwell produced documents, declassified on his authority, that showed the real timeline, the real orders. He named names, officers who'd built careers on lies. And with each word, the crowd's anger turned inward. Hargrove's face drained of color. The reporters scribbled furiously. Sarah felt the chains on her wrists loosen, not physically, but in her mind. She wasn't alone anymore, but the story didn't end there. Caldwell's intervention saved her career, but it didn't erase the scars. Sarah returned to duty, her trident restored, but the trust she'd had in the system was fractured. She threw herself into her work, training harder, shooting sharper, but the weight of those 3 months, the isolation, the doubt, lingered. Jake Harrow, her teammate, became her anchor, the one person who'd never wavered. Over late night, coffees in the mess hall, they talked about everything but the tribunal, movies, baseball, the way the desert sky looked at dawn. Slowly, she rebuilt herself, not just as a SEAL, but as a woman who'd stared down a storm and walked through it. Years later, Sarah stood on a different stage, this time to receive a medal for valor. The crowd was smaller, quieter, but there. Applause was real. Caldwell was there, older now, his hair fully white. He pinned the medal to her chest and leaned in, his voice a whisper. "You were always enough," he said. Sarah nodded, her throat tight, and as she looked out at the faces, Jake's among them, she felt something shift. Not closure exactly, but a kind of peace. The chains were gone, but their echo remained, a reminder of what she'd survived. And as she stepped off the stage, the desert sun warm on her face, she knew she'd carry that strength forever.